Hey, I'm Jeff Baumgartner with Light Reading. We're here in Denver at the Big 5G event, and I'm happy to be joined here by Gordon Mansfield with AT&T. Thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, good to see people in person. It's been a while.
It has.
Obviously 5G is what we're here to talk about, so I figure we'll just kind of start big picture and maybe just have you give us a little bit of a status update on your rollout and deployment of 5G standalone core. Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. So we're making great progress with our standalone core. We're really waiting for the ecosystem. So when you think about standalone, you want to make sure that you're truly introducing an experience difference and not necessarily taking steps backwards to get there. And so right now, you need to have the core, you need to have the RAM, but most importantly, you have to have devices that can support all of the different combinations and capabilities that give from a speed perspective, a similar experience that then you can start to build on top of with lower latency and other interesting things that come along with standalone.
Okay, and what's kind of you're waiting for the ecosystem to develop. There are signs of a lot of progress. Kind of where do you see things? Where could it be better? Where are they looking great?
Yeah, and it's all coming together. Frankly, there's a lot of moving parts, and so getting all of the parts to work together in an effective way, I think as we go into next year is really when the maturity will start to show up to where you can start to see it, kind of at scale, right? And so I think we'll continue we'll start slow and kind of build as the ecosystem is maturing, and as that happens, then I think applications that can take advantage of the new capabilities will start to come as well, and that's when it becomes really important.
Right, and that's the next thing I want to talk about. I think you had mentioned latency, but what are some of the biggest benefits you expect to gain, from standalone 5G, whether it's performance, capabilities, applications?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing that we often talk about, in traditional sense in all the previous Gs have been speed.
Right.
And the reality is the speed's there for just about any application that you would want today. What's not there is latency, and from a latency perspective, we really need lower latency for that immersive experience, right? And so, watching videos, sure, okay, you need speed, but you don't really need latency. But if you want to have an interactive experience with that video, then you've got to you've got to bring the latency down to where it seems natural and not clunky and kind of not in step with whatever it is you're viewing.
Yeah, a little jarring experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, lots of things in that space. I expect a lot of development in that space. AR overlays, things like that. On top of kind of the immersive entertainment type experience.
Okay, great. I want to switch a little bit to the kind of what's going on with spectrum and 5G, and we've been kind of trying to keep tabs on what's going on with the C-band and all the spectrum you're going to have at hand. What kind of progress are you making, with that? I mean, we keep hearing about, they need to clear things out, get it ready for you. But where are you there, and then what are some of the challenges you're kind of faced with, maybe in the early days when you start to get that put out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're well on our way. Site acquisition takes a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. And then you've got you mentioned the clearing of the spectrum itself, and so our first sites with that C-band spectrum will be ready to go when that spectrum clears later this year. We expect next year to continue that build. We've publicly stated that we'll hit at least 75 million pops next year, and then when we get into 23 is where we'll accelerate that build to get to that 200 million or more mark.
Okay, and what's kind of the most attractive thing with C-band? I mean, it's kind of that mid-band area, but for you, what do you think is the big?
Absolutely. So we mentioned already about standalone core and some of the new capabilities, and we've talked a little bit about speed. The network today has got plenty of capacity to serve the initial implementation of these capabilities. But as the ecosystem builds and you start to have more and more usage of high bandwidth types of applications, you've got to have that mid-band in place so that you can have wide area coverage of that C-band. And so really, kind of building on top of the work that we've been doing for the last few years. It just gives us that incremental runway to continue to build capacity in the network to deliver new and exciting experiences.
Okay, great. And then here at the event, another big topic that has been discussed is Open RAN, right? And I was just checking up on our coverage. Back in April, you guys told the FCC intend to roll out or start rolling out Open RAN equipment into the network within the next year. So with that as the backdrop, what's kind of the status update on that?
Yeah, I mean, we have hardware that's being installed in our network today that is O-RAN capable. It's not running O-RAN yet, but it's upgradable, so we can put software, change the software to enable that. So the building blocks for O-RAN are being put in place, and as we're ready to start to introduce capabilities, we feel pretty good about the hardware. All right, if you don't, we got a pretty big network. If you don't start building out the physical hardware, then it makes it pretty hard to shift.
Right, and when you're talking about that shift, how is that going to happen? I mean, is it going to be like a gradual migration? Kind of site to site? Can you coexist? Open RAN and previous generation technology?
That's a really good question. So it will happen gradually, right? We have a lot of invested infrastructure into our network. Us going and ripping everything out and building, a complete new network just to get to Open RAN probably isn't the best approach. And so our strategy will be one that is a transitional strategy. As we build capabilities, we will enable O-RAN capabilities on those, and we do expect that the proprietary hardware that exists today can, in fact, coexist. There are some components of O-RAN. Oftentimes, we probably should back up a minute. Oftentimes, people think of O-RAN just as open front haul, being able to put anybody's radio with anybody's baseband. O-RAN is so much more than that. You have a lot of intelligence that's back in the network. And so that intelligence that can work across kind of the nodes that are purely open versus nodes that are still proprietary, those capabilities we see line of sight to working well together, and that's where I see the biggest bang for our buck early on as we gradually build out the network. Okay,
and since you brought up, hey, this has to be a strategic business reason, you have to have one. You can't just say we're going to do Open RAN just to do Open RAN. So when you're thinking about kind of the gradual migration, is there something particular about an area or a market that makes it more attractive than another to do Open RAN first and kind of say, well, they're on the front burner, these guys are on the back? I mean, what's kind of the gaining factor for that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So from an O-RAN perspective, you have components called a RIC, a radio intelligent controller. Then you have components called an SMO. And on top of those, you can actually run third-party apps. And so when you start thinking about closed-loop applications that can run on top of your infrastructure, it allows you to bring a lot more intelligence that allows you to, in a more automated fashion, manage the capacity and the traffic within your network to deliver on an experience. And so if you think in a dense urban environment, in fact, we're going to talk a little bit later today on the subject, when you think about a dense environment, that's where your interference is greatest. And so if I can have a best of breed of applications, it doesn't now have to be from my radio vendors themselves, that can run in a closed loop fashion, that kind of optimizes and helps me manage that interference, that gets more capacity out of the network to deliver on the promise of the experiences that 5G will deliver. That's the strategic value of the capabilities.
Yeah, so there's a lot going into these decisions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not like, well, we'll just do this market because they're first in line. Yeah, there's a lot of reasoning behind it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Great, and then I cover a lot of the broadband industry, particularly from the wired side, and we've been keeping tabs on AT&T's activity with fiber build out. Getting pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously we also kind of fit that in with mobile, the network and service convergence. But was wondering if you could talk a little bit about kind of the vision at AT&T for converged wireline, wireless network, and how they're going to coexist, work together, or stay apart. I guess depending on the situation. Yeah.
No, that's a great point. By the way, I own the converged network from the broadband side as well, and so it's not a coincidence that from an AT&T perspective, we've actually brought the technology from a RAN perspective together with the technology from a broadband perspective. And so when we think about even the transport that we're building today for our 5G network, or we think about the fiber that we're building for our broadband network, we have a common topology, right? We've built capabilities to where when we're laying fiber, I can use that fiber, I can peel it off and use it for 5G, or I can peel it off and I can use it for broadband. If you take it a step further and you think about kind of that converged strategy, anytime you have fiber is always going to deliver, in this case, fiber for the last mile. Fiber is always going to deliver a superior experience. And so if it's cost effective for us to get fiber to a consumer's home, then we're going to deliver fiber to make sure that we're giving them the best possible experience that we can within the investment thesis. Now there are some scenarios where it's just frankly cost prohibitive to get fiber to every one of those homes. And so now having 5G as a backdrop that allows you, and in this case, think more less dense areas, having 5G to be able to deliver a lot of that same promise, that's where the value comes in. And so I can now create a hybrid network that allows us to use fiber where fiber is appropriate and use 5G where 5G is appropriate.
Right, and we've also been trying to keep tabs on where fixed wireless is going, and it seems like some, strategically, some companies are a little more aggressive than others, more targeted versus more blanket.
Yep.
So where are you guys fitting in on that?
We'll be more targeted. And again, that's what I mean with that last mile. If I can get fiber to somebody's home, it is going to be a superior service to anybody that's delivering 5G to that same home. Okay. Now, if you don't have fiber, right, and it's cost prohibitive to get fiber to the home, 5G will deliver a good experience, right? And it comes down to scale, right? If you think about here in Denver, downtown Denver, where you have a high density of users, if everybody was trying to get their broadband from fixed wireless, it wouldn't be very impressive. Right. However, if you go into the outskirts of Denver, where maybe fiber's not to every home, 5G will probably deliver a good experience of several hundred meg to those folks, and over time with more spectrum, even a gig. But it's a matter of density of subscribers all trying to compete for those assets. Okay.
Great. Well, thank you for taking all my questions. We covered a lot of ground, but I appreciate all your answers, and glad you could join us here today.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.